Welcome to episode 271 of OTD, your daily dose of soccer history by 17 Law Sky. It's July 29, 1911. Calcutta, IFA Shield final. Mohun Bagan against East Yorkshire Regiment. An all-Indian team against a British military team. Bare feet against boots. Colonial subjects against the Empire's game. East Yorkshire score first. Then Shibdas Bhaduri equalizes. And near the end, Abhilash Ghosh scores. Mohun Bagan 2, East Yorkshire Regiment 1. And for the first time, an Indian team wins the IFA Shield. And football in India has its origin myth. But how did we get here? Start with the Empire. Football arrives in India through British soldiers, officials, schools and clubs. Not as Indian culture, as imperial recreation. The ball moves through cantonments, parade grounds, colleges, and above all, Calcutta, the capital of British India until 1911, and the great early center of Indian football. The British bring the game, but Indians make it theirs. That is the real story. And one name stands at the beginning, Nagendra Prasad Sarbadhikari, the father of Indian football. In the late 1870s, as the story goes, he sees British soldiers playing football in Calcutta, brings the game into the schoolyard, and begins the work that pioneers always do, forming clubs, organizing matches, turning curiosity into habit. The first Indian football culture does not arrive fully built. It has to be argued into existence against colonial condensation, against lack of facilities, against the social idea that some games belong to some people and not others. Then the tournaments come. The Durand Cup begins in 1888, created inside the British military world, and becomes Asia's oldest football tournament. The Indian Football Association is founded in Calcutta in 1893. The IFA Shield begins the same year. But look at the name, Indian Football Association. In colonial Calcutta, Indian does not mean Indian run in the national sense. For years, Indian clubs are trying to enter a structure controlled by British authority, British clubs, British regiments, and British prestige. So football becomes a place of unequal contact. Indian players can play the British game, but can they beat British teams? Can they win British trophies? Can they make the imperial sport answer back? That is the question. Mohun Bagan are founded in 1889, green and maroon, a club from North Calcutta. Not yet the giant of modern Indian football memory, but already part of a city where sport and politics are starting to lean into one another. And by 1911, the timing is explosive. This is Bengal after the 1905 partition of Bengal and the Swadeshi movement. This is Calcutta, where newspapers, schools, clubs, theatres, and sporting grounds all are part of public life. This is a colonial city where Indians are constantly being told, directly or indirectly, where they stand. So a football match is not just a football match, not when one side wears boots and the other mostly plays barefoot, not when one side is a British regiment, and not when the crowd understands the symbolic possibility before the match has even begun. Now the IFA Shield run. Mohun Bagan begin against St. Xavier's, 3-0, then Rangers, 3-1, then Rifle Brigade, 1-0, then Middlesex Regiment in the semi-final. First 1-1, replay, Mohun Bagan win 3-0. This is already serious. This is not one lucky afternoon. They have beaten their way through British and institutional opposition to reach the final. Now July 29, Calcutta Football Ground. Huge crowd. So many people that not everyone can see the pitch properly. The city is listening through rumor, movement, shouting, and, according to a legend, even kites in the sky, carrying colour and meaning to people outside the ground. East Yorkshire Regiment are strong, organized, physical, booted. They're military. Mohun Bagan are led by Shibdas Bhaduri, captain and forward. The famous 11 become the Immortal XI. And my apologies for now butchering names. I'm doing my best here. Hiralal Mukherjee in goal. Bhuti Sukul, Sutir Chatterjee, the one Mohun Bagan player generally remembered as wearing boots. Manmohan Mukherjee, Rajan Sen Gupta, Nilmadhab Bhattacharjee, Kanud Roy, Habul Sakar, Abhilash Ghosh, Shibdas Bhaduri, and Shibdas Bhaduri. Think about the physical fact of this. Most of Mohun Bagan are barefoot against a British regiment. This can become romantic too easily, so let us be precise here. Barefoot football was not magic. It was also limitation. It spoke to access, habit, poverty, equipment, surfaces, and the state of Indian football development. But on this day, the limitation becomes part of the legend. The match begins. East Yorkshire push. Mohun Bagan resist. Then East Yorkshire score first. A free kick. Sergeant Jackson. 1-0. Now the old script is ready. The brave Indian team has gone far. The British regiment will still win. Except Mohun Bagan do not accept the script. Shibdas Bhaduri equalizes. 1-1. And now the ground changes. The crowd changes. The Empire's game is suddenly alive in Indian hands. The second half tightens. East Yorkshire are still dangerous. Hiralal Mukherjee has to defend the goal. Mohun Bagan have to suffer. And then late. Shibdas creates again. Abhilash Ghosh finishes. Mohun Bagan 2, East Yorkshire Regiment 1. Final whistle. The shield is theirs. And Calcutta erupts. And this is why July 29 becomes Mohun Bagan Day. Not because the club simply won a cup, but because the colonized people saw one of their teams beat the rulers at a game the rulers had brought with them. That doesn't mean the British Empire fell because of a football match, of course not. But national feeling is built from moments, symbols, stories, scenes people can repeat. And this one was perfect. The barefoot Indians footballers, the booted British regiment, the Calcutta crowd, the late winner, and the shield lifted. But so what? For Indian football, this is the origin myth, not the literal beginning of the game in India. That had come earlier. Not the first club, not the first tournament, not the first Indian footballer, but the first moment that feels national. Mohun Bagan's victory says Indian football can produce more than participation. It can produce conquest. And because it happens in 1911, inside colonial rule, it fuses sporting memory with political imagination. That fusion matters. In many countries, football becomes national because of the national team. In India, one of the first national football myths comes from a club, Mohun Bagan, before India has independence. It helps explain India's later early strength in Asia. We talked about this in episode 130, when India won football gold at the first Asian Games in 1951. And if you want that full story, please go back and listen. That episode follows India from the early builders through the Barefoot Olympics of 1948, the strange 1950 World Cup withdrawal, and then the Asian Games gold under Syed Abdul Rahim. The key point is this. India did not come from nowhere in 1951. There was a long football culture behind it. Calcutta, Bengal, Mohun Bagan, East Bengal later, Mohammedan Sporting, the Durand Cup, the IFA Shield, the old club ecosystem, a whole football world before the AFC even existed. And when the Asian Football Confederation is founded in 1954, India one of the founding members. That is not accidental. Indian football belonged in the first map of Asian football because Indian football had deep roots. The 1911 victory also contains the warning. The barefoot romance is beautiful, but romance is not infrastructure. India's early football story produced extraordinary peaks. Mohun Bagan in 1911, Olympic respect in 1948 and 56, Asian Games gold in 51 and 62, Asian Cup runners-up in 1964. But the ecosystem did not turn those peaks into permanent continental dominance. Other countries professionalized, institutionalized, invested, and built clearer pathways. India's football center of gravity also has to compete with cricket's enormous cultural rise. So 1911 is both pride and question. Pride because the story still glows. Question because the country that could produce that kind of football culture so early never became the Asian giant its population and passion might suggest. And the victory changes memory at club level. Mohun Bagan becomes more than a club with trophies. They become a national club in feeling. The Immortal XI are not remembered only as players. They are remembered as figures in a civic story. A postage stamp is issued decades later. The day is commemorated. The match is retold, and retold, and retold. That is how sports history works. A match becomes a story becomes inheritance, and inheritance becomes identity. And there's one more thing I love about this episode. The IFA Shield itself is a colonial institution, a British-run structure, a tournament of the Raj. Mohun Bagan do not reject that structure from the outside. They enter it, play through it, and win it. That is a particular kind of sporting answer. You gave us a game, you controlled the ground, you wore the boots, but we won the shield. Before we go, 3 things to take away from July 29, 1911. First, Mohun Bagan's IFA Shield win was not the beginning of Indian football, but it became Indian football's great origin myth, the moment the colonial game became a national story. Second, the people before the match matter. Nagendra Prasad Sarbadhikari, the clubs, the tournaments, Calcutta football culture, and the Indian players who made the British game their own. And third, the legacy is both glory and warning. India had deep football roots and great early peaks, but turning memory into a sustained football system proved much harder than winning one immortal final. On this day in 1911, Mohun Bagan beat East Yorkshire Regiment 2-1 in Calcutta. Shibdas Bhaduri scored. Abhilash Ghosh scored. An Indian team won the IFA Shield for the first time. And football in India gained a story it has never stopped telling. That is all for episode 271 of OTD, your daily dose of soccer history by 17 Laws Guy. If you like this story, I ask you to please help OTD getting pushed in front of new people. Hit the subscribe button, rate the show 5 stars, or share it with your friends. The show now has almost 300 followers, so let's get it to 500 next, shall we? Thank you for your support. Tomorrow, we go to July 30, 1930, and we round off this World Cup month with the first World Cup final. Uruguay 4, Argentina 2. There's a lot to unpack, so see you then.